To be an immigrant is to dream. My parents lived good lives in Mumbai, India. My father worked in a law office and my mother was a teacher. They were surrounded by family in our Kachi Memon compound. They were constantly attending events, weddings, and parties. Yet, when my father's law firm decided to open up an office in Jackson Heights, Queens, they chose to move to a new country, leaving behind everything and everyone they knew. They did this because, like the hundreds of thousands of other South Asians who come to America, had a hope, a dream that they could make life better for their children forever. Still, when my father came to look at apartments and neighborhoods in New York City, he didn't choose Jackson Heights, where it seems South Asian culture is vibrant, easily visible through the shining sari shops and heard through the rich dialects in the street and tasted the variety of desi restaurants. He chose an apartment in an area of the city that was quiet, full of parks and beautiful sunsets, in the Bronx. Yes, that same Bronx you hear about when it's Yankee season. The same Bronx you hear about when you talk about a famous zoo. The same Bronx you think might be too dangerous to go to at night, too far, full of hoodlums. The Bronx, home of J-Lo and George Carlin, Mark Twain and Clifford Odets, Kerry Washington and John Patrick Shanley, Jon Favreau and Al Pacino, Swiss Beats and Billy Joel, Teddy Roosevelt and Colin Powell, Calvin Klein and Ralph Lauren, and so many more influential people. This was the Bronx I grew up in, a borough that shaped my opinions, my outlook, and my dream. I remember being a kid when my mother decided that she would only wear Indian clothes to work. She said her culture was beautiful and she would not be mandated to wear American clothes. I was embarrassed. The kids at school made fun of me. They didn't like the smell from my food. They didn't like that I wore sparkly clothes and jewelry to school performances, and they didn't like my unpronounceable name. Yet my parents catered to my every whim. I wanted to learn the violin and piano, so my parents got me a violin and keyboard and paid for my lessons. I wanted to sing in the chorus, and my mother would be there in the audience telling everyone I was her daughter. I would run around like, "Where's Waldo?" in my shiny green and gold lenga, while my mother smiled proudly and students seethed with disdain, wondering why I had to constantly show off. But I was just expressing myself artistically and combining my culture in it too. I admit, I was an overachiever, and I had to defend myself. I got A's on my report cards, but I got slapped by a teacher after getting picked on by her favorite student. I got extra credit points, but I had my first fight when I was 12 years old when I punched a girl across the street from my school, only because she was picking on me with others. To walk away was not an option. In the Bronx, you learned one thing. You have to fight for what you believe in. Junior high school changed things for me. I felt stronger. I wanted to be cooler, and so I spent my time hanging out with Bronx friends, and I gave up the instruments. My parents were upset, but I was finally fitting in. I refused to go to weddings with my parents, and I started talking like my Puerto Rican friends. I dressed urban. I wanted to learn Spanish and date Hispanic guys. I was 13. Girls in my class were having sex and getting abortions. But my parents had taught me well, and I would never do anything to shame my family. It wasn't until a huge fight outside my school on Castle Hill that my family wanted me to transfer schools. Regardless of how much I tried to fit in, I was still different. I still had an unpronounceable name, and my mother still wore Indian clothes to parent-teacher meetings. I got into the performing arts high school, but my parents refused to let me go. So I went to the Bronx High School of Science with dyed red hair and silver boots. I had a newfound sense of my culture when I saw so many students who were South Asian, something I had not experienced in my earlier schools. I immediately joined the Indian cultural group, but was disappointed at the cattiness of girls within my culture, and I was dismayed at the lack of sisterly support. I decided to be a performer again. I joined the speech team, which is part of a national forensics competition. We'd rehearse after school and then compete with other high school students all over the city and nationally on the weekends. As a high school student, I traveled to Harvard, Yale, Stanford, UPenn, and UChicago. My parents paid these bills and enjoyed the trophies I brought home. As a senior, I became the captain of the speech team, leading the team to victory time and again, and personally realizing that I could write speeches and perform theater. I was reading plays, going to see Broadway plays, and it was as a freshman in college that I saw my first solo play. I went to college in a remote part of Western New York, full of sunsets and trees and small town life. It was very different from the Bronx neighborhood, precisely the reason that my parents urged me to go and try something new. They had learned that it was 5 hours away, but they loved that tuition was under $10K, and even less as I started getting theater scholarships. I started off as a communications major, not totally understanding what that was exactly, but I enjoyed my public speaking classes, researching topics, and writing speeches about them. At the same time, I was getting lead roles in plays directed by professors and students. It was such a great time, acting in Greek tragedies and contemporary comedies, pretending to be a woman who was held captive by a Christian extremist pro-life group, and playing a Sikh man in a Vijay Tendulkar play about women's rights. I was loading up with classes that I felt would help me to understand people: English, child psychology, anthropology, and of course, theater. I took world theater, political theater, technical theater, Asian theater, acting and directing. I was directing plays that expressed the human condition. I tried to show the mostly white student body that there were different perspectives, that theater could truly be used to broaden your mind. One day, the dean called me into his office. He asked me when I was going to declare a theater major. I told him that was not part of my parents' dream. They wanted me to be a lawyer. He asked me what was my dream. I told him I didn't know. But I did know that I love acting. I love the stage. I love being part of a script that makes my heart melt and sends shivers down my spine. I love the lights and sound that make a script go from the page to a replica of real life. I love that theater was used to move the masses all over the world, even 5,000 years ago. I love that every word is important. I love that the audience can impact a performance just by their energy. I love that something happens to the performer and you discover emotions you didn't realize you had. I love that a script can help you understand who you are. I love that a script can make you discuss issues in the world and create change. I love that this art gives me a voice. As far back as I can remember, important discussions in my family were at the dining table. Of course they were, because food was and is central to our lives. My mother's kachi mein recipes with shrimp biryani and kagina are to this day cherished, and we request them especially for birthdays and special occasions. We reschedule everything to be a part of the twice-a-year Eid tradition with sheer korma and savaya, and we live for my father who makes pani puri. It was during the school break that I told my parents I wanted to be a theater major. They got very upset and immediately asked how I would make money. I told them I would find a way. I'm a fighter after all. I will fight for my dreams. They told me there are no South Asians on TV or in film in America. I told them times will change. I will work hard and fight for my dreams. What is the dream? My father asked. I told him, it makes me happy to do this, and my dream is to be happy. I graduated with a BA in theater and a double scholarship for my acting and directing contributions. I was known as the multicultural girl because I was challenging choices for main stage plays and encouraging that we have multicultural casts. In an academic setting, it's vital that we challenge preconceptions. I told my classmates, you always expect me to put on a British accent or Southern accent and play white. Why can't you put on an accent and play non-white? Of course, this rhetoric is highly debated in professional theater. My parents came to see me in plays in college and realized that I wasn't bad as an actress. When I graduated and got an internship at a talent agency in New York City to learn the business side of the acting industry, I learned so much. I learned that there are many beautiful and talented people. I learned that the most successful people are the nicest. I learned that training is important, but so is networking, relationship building, and supporting others. I learned that being an actor is hard work, but it is all worth it for that character that is so superbly written. I learned that $50 a week is not so bad when you're living at home and getting invited to Broadway shows by Tony Award-winning actors that your boss represents. I learned that there are some things that are priceless when you're young. I learned that rejection is a part of this business, and if you can't take it, this field is not for you. It was around this time that I started my own nonprofit organization called iBlank. I decided that I wanted to create my own opportunities by producing theater in a multicultural way. I produced full-length plays that required multicultural casts. I produced a series of plays by classic playwrights cast them diversely. I produced a new work series to give budding playwrights a chance to hear their work. In all of these projects, the audience perspective was key, and we frequently held Q&As. For the last 8 years, the Special Events Department runs a project called A Slice of Hope, through which we organize pizza parties at homeless shelters with live musicians all over the country. The theater department has been producing my solo play, which has been touring the country, playing at colleges, and opened off-Broadway in May. It was in 2008 that I remembered the solo play that I had seen so many years ago at an off-Broadway theater in New York City. A solo play is a theatrical piece that involves only one actor or actress, and it has a few forms. One form is when the actress talks to the audience as direct address. The other form is when the actress breaks off and introduces some lines from other characters in quick transitions. Yet another style is when there are only character monologues connected by a theme or event. When I saw the solo play years before, with a Black woman playing a variety of ethnicities, genders, and ages, I thought, I would love to do this one day. I learned that big-time actors got their big breaks from their solo plays. Whoopi Goldberg, Patrick Stewart, John Leguizamo. That same actress who I saw, Sarah Jones, had her next solo play produced on Broadway by Meryl Streep. I started free writing what I know about growing up Indian in the Bronx. And I realized that there was a story of displacement within the context of culture and urbanization. There was a post-immigrant story that I could tell, a story that represents people who feel torn between cultures, who don't always say that they are American. Still, I had never taken a writing class, and I found myself saying, I'm not a writer. I took the script to a solo coach, and she told me that it wasn't good, that people don't talk the way I had them talking, that it needed work. Maybe even write a completely different story. I was crushed. I put the script away for a while after that. Actually 2 years, as I also went through a relationship that failed. In the time that followed, which was filled with a heavy sadness, I didn't want to perform anymore. My brother told me to finish the script, and I told him, I don't even want to go outside. How could I get up on stage in front of audiences vulnerable? Surely they would be able to see right through to my pain. I was tired of fighting. I couldn't go through these emotions on stage, much less in life. Yet he kept mentioning it. A woman I'd worked with invited me to San Francisco, where she lived, to finish the script. I saw a door opening in front of me, like a sign. A message was sent to me. I believed to finish what I started, to keep fighting, to be happy. For an entire week, I did nothing but write and edit. I finally read it aloud for the first time, and she told me that it was going to be good, and I believed her. We titled it, They Call Me Q. My name, only mentioned at the end of the play, would be a way for me to take ownership of all the negative things that have happened to me, and finally be happy about everything. I applied to festivals around the country, met other performers, and discovered that reviewers and audiences appreciated my story. I didn't expect this reaction. I only dreamed that I would end up off-Broadway with a marquee that has my face on it. I only hoped that I would meet a producer who understood my hustle and appreciated me performing every month for a year and a half in order to create the best product. I now understand tangibly that we all have a voice, an ability to move others, and a force to create positive change no matter what field we are in. Over the last 2 years of performance, 100 shows later, I have felt the support of so many, and the kindness does not go unnoticed. Desi's love it because it reminds them of themselves and their families and how people cannot pronounce their names. People of various ethnic backgrounds love the discourse that I have between being American and ethnic, the other. Women love the show because I play 13 characters challenging the notions of freedom and independence and gender roles. Students love it. They cry to me afterwards that they have felt lost, and it's hard for them to love themselves. I have met thousands of people of all cultures and socioeconomic upbringings who have told me in their own way, someone came up to me after a show to tell me this, that there's a little bit of Q in them. I believe there's a little bit of them in me that keeps me fighting, striving to achieve my dream of happiness. Thank you so much, Camp Philly, and to Mimi for inviting me here. And if you're in New York City, I hope you can come check out the show.